I am here in a public place, but also on my own today because Pauline seems to have other um, things at this moment. That's why I decided to continue the tradition of talking about humanitarian love that we're building now together with Pauline. Um, and I see that she is joining as well. Hold on. Hi,
Hi,
Pauline.
hi,
I decided
Esther.
to start anyway. Great
Yes,
that you
yes,
joined.
yes.
How are
Sorry
you?
about being late. I was traveling and just arrived on time. Happy to be here.
Yay! So great to see you. So I hope you all can see both of us. I am still in a public place, so I hope that you can listen to me, hear me. So the topic that we wanted to talk about today with Pauline, and her suggestion is a disconnect. The topic that I think happens or comes up a lot, but maybe many of us are not really aware of it, and we want to talk about what that is, why that is a problem, and how do you recognize it, how do you see in yourself, and what can you do about it. So, Pauline, great that you're here. So let's start diving into what would you say is disconnect when someone asks you?
Okay. Well, disconnect. I think it can happen to any of us, but if we talk about the specific nature of the humanitarian work that we do, the specificity of the work is that one is hard work. There's a lot of work, and it's a fast-paced environment. So there's all the ingredients to be stressed. If we make it
Yeah,
short, being stressed up with a lot of responsibility. Sometimes it's emergency, sometimes it's up to life savings activities. And the needs we want to address are usually like huge, much more than what we can do in a day, in 24 hours. So first, there is the amount of the work that is a factor creating stress. Then second, there is the environment that at best is unfamiliar environment from where we're coming from usually. So we have to adapt. And at worst, it can be very insecure environments, either yes, conflicts, insecurity with risk of kidnapping, bombing, anything. So nature of the work that is very demanding and very stressful, different environments, this make us having to be usually tense, and on the lookout for threats. So
yeah,
really what happened is touch our nervous system. So this is where we start talking about disconnect is it's a natural mechanism that we are in the fight or flight mode. We are ready to act because there are so much needs and so much work to be done, and because the environment is not that friendly. So there is a natural tension in the body, yeah, to react, to be able to be reactive, because this is what we are required to be:
yeah.
reactive, active, and reactive. Um, and I would say to that, a third factor that is present in the humanitarian work is, being closer than most people to human suffering, depending on what missions we are in. But if it's a war zone, if it's, natural emergency catastrophe, and we are confronted closer, like medical people, to human suffering. And so this is where the emotion comes up. And so to be able to cope, whether you're directly delivering aid or even if you're in the back end, um, to be able to cope with that, what I've seen for myself and what I've seen with people around me is that there is like a contraction. We have to keep it, we have to hold it together, like hold yourself together. So without wanting it, there is a shutdown. There's a natural protection, because feeling too much, being too sensitive can be dangerous. If we are too moved, if we're too sensitive to what we're seeing, I'm remembering first mission, when you're arriving in an emergency mission for the first time, and yes, you're not always prepared. So yes, so there's the stress, the insecurity, and then the shutting down emotional. That are for me the three factors that can lead to a tension and to a disconnect. The tension is first, the stress, the nervous system is into fight or flight. And this make us to be able to cope and to function, there is the disconnect. Then the disconnect happen, you know.
Yeah. So maybe to add to that is that disconnect for me is also basically continue reacting to things and not really having time or space to be listening to what's going on within, right? So after all
Yes.
those factors that you mentioned, that we don't really are feeling or we are not really following what is it that really good for us in that moment that we need to be taken care of or that we need to be resting and all of that things are not there and therefore we tend to be always on the lookout and reacting and overworking. Sometimes it's also difficult to process certain emotions because we don't really have time to do that, like grief a lot of the time I think is we tend not to take time to do that. And of course we're not blaming anyone, it's just how unfortunate the nature of work is. A lot of disappointment, frustrations come along and that we don't really have time to process all of that and therefore we need to have this mindset of we have to react, we don't have time, right? So that's I
Yeah.
think the mindset would take over to many other duty stations even though we may not be in that duty station any longer, but we tend to have that habit developed and habits tend to develop very fast and very firm in those types of environments, and then we tend to go to a family duty station or less threatening or more secure duty stations and we tend to continue that level of lifestyle. Or I also know colleagues who have decided that they can't really cope in those family duty stations, they need those type of
Mm,
emergency reactionary duty stations. Otherwise, they don't really know how else to behave, right? So that's the other extreme. So obviously, Pauline and I were talking about extreme cases to display what we mean by it. And we talked about the nervous system reaction of our subconsciously we're reacting to things without really noticing. And there are also the parts of our consciously choosing to do that even though we don't need to, like overworking, for instance, a lot of the time, because we don't know what else to do or how else to occupy ourselves or how else to really process those emotions. Therefore, we tend to get into the doing parts, right? So now that we know that this is how the disconnect is happening, maybe it's important to talk about why it is a problem in the long run. I think we all know it at some level that this is a problem, but maybe we're not really aware how much of that can be a problem in relation to love. I mean, we will talk about self love at some point. That's totally crucial, but also in finding love. What would you say, Pauline? Why is it a problem or an obstacle, I
yeah.
should say, maybe? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that. I just wanted to add on what you say because you mentioned overworking. And so, yes, we started to talk about like this disconnection, this tension, and then you started talking about emotions. So, yeah, we are not processing emotions. Like most of us, I mean, I would say globally, I know that there is a culture of self-care and well-being that is starting and mental health that is starting to emerge in some organization,
Mm,
but it is not so mainstream yet.
yeah.
And yes, we are, and in general, I think in the I would say outside humanitarian world, also people are not so used to process their emotions in a
Yeah.
have ways to do that. So yes, there's a lot of coping mechanism that I get put in place. That is the overwork because there is like this kind of addiction to the adrenaline and to the do
Yeah.
because this is where there is a sense of control,
Yeah.
whereas the emotional life seems more threatening inside, huh? And consciously we're like,
Yeah.
whoa, there's this big thing happening, I don't know how to deal with this, so I'm just going to go to yeah, write this report or have this meeting, and then we push it down very unconsciously. But this is what happens over and over. So overworking is one of the coping mechanism, but of course there's also alcohol, drugs, sexuality, in a way to numb and not to feel. Not saying that in general is bad, but just that used in a way not to feel. And so, yes, moving on to why that is a problem in general for the well-being, but more specifically for love life and for relationship. What I see is that for me, love and relationship is mostly about feeling, right? Is about being open, having your heart open, being connecting to, being relaxed enough that you can feel, good in your own skin. And from then you can choose the person, you can notice if the person is right for you, you can listen to your intuition. And then once you start the relationship, you want to open, you want to start building trust. And so to be able to trust and establish intimacy with somebody else, you also want to be intimate with yourself.
Yeah.
And intimacy with yourself cannot happen, or it's more difficult if you're like not connected to what is happening in your body, your sensation, your physical sensation, your emotions, when you're pushing away fear over time, stress, sadness, grief, rage, when you're pushing it back, there's this disconnect that happens. For me, it's almost physical, and you can feel it when you work a
Yeah.
lot. You have this tension in the shoulder, you have this contraction in the solar plexus that is kind of an armor, like a shield. It's like, yes, I'm ready,
Mm.
I'm ready. And when you want to, invite love into your life, you want to relax, you want to open, kind of like a flower. So maybe it's a bit more extreme maybe it sounds like a caricature, but yeah, when you think about love and sexuality, you want to be relaxed. You want to be at home in your
Yeah.
body, to be able to feel and to let somebody in.
Yes. And I would also love to add that I fear one of the main reasons or obstacles this disconnect is when we are in that state of reacting the whole time, we tend to also invite people in that state of mind or in that state of emotional state, right? We tend to attract, maybe if you want to call it attract, or we want to invite those type of people because our uh, rhythmic life is that way, and it's difficult to find someone else in that moment or understand that person. That's why we tend to get into those relationships, and then we tend to make it mean like, well, it's not really lasting long, or this is not really what I was looking for. They seem to want this, and I'd want something else. Even though, like Pauline was saying, that connection wise with yourself, intimacy wise, you may not be in the state of relaxed and open and loving, right? You are more like in the state of how to cope, how to survive, maybe is the extreme word, but also how to do the next thing, that do the next thing. And if you're in that state, it's difficult then to be really connecting with yourself and then also connecting with the other person, which then may lead to relationships that may be something that you don't really want. And the other big problem that I see often, also, I've done it many times myself, unfortunately, which is if I'm in this scarcity mindset of I have to have this, or I have to have this relationship as a coping or rescue mechanism in some ways to my otherwise very busy life, right? Then that relationship also will not be yielding the results or the effect that I want, basically, because that relationship will be built from the scarcity approach of I need this from you and you need to provide this to me, kind of a beginning. And that's, we know that is also not really a good basis for a long-term relationship, right? So that's why
Yeah.
I think what we're really depicting here is that if you're really looking into what is it that you're really wanting in a relationship, and that's long term, that's close to your heart and how you want love to express in that relationship, probably it's important that you experience yourself first and then be able to share that with someone else, is, I guess, what I'm saying.
Hmm.
So I think we talked a lot about what it is and why it could be a problem or obstacle for many people. And I think we also touched upon how you recognize it, how you use it as a coping mechanism, right? So maybe now there's time to talk about what to do, basically, which all comes down to.
Yeah.
Colin, what would you say?
Yeah. Yeah, I would like just to add one point on like what you were saying. You know, you talked about the
Mhm.
scarcity, and I think just to go a bit further on precising how it is impacting your relationship. To make it clear, I think it impacts your relationship in terms of who you are choosing. You know, in the moment of selecting
Yeah.
or attracting, and then once you start a relationship, because yes, when you were talking about scarcity, I would say also, yeah, when you are not fully, yeah, connected to your body wisdom, or to picking up clues, you know, of like body
Mm,
language, and when you're not truly, you know, at rest to like, okay, this is what I want, or when you don't have like this feeling of safety in the body,
yeah.
um, yes, you might not attract the best partner, you might not be equipped the best equipped to pick the right partner. So just to confirm
Mm,
what you're saying,
yes.
yeah, and then once you're starting a relationship, when you are tensed, and we still, I think everybody can relate to that. When you're tense and when you're ready to fight, this fight or flight mechanism, you might not be the most patient in your relationship. You might be more reactive, and so there is
Yes.
also this idea of yeah, trusting and being really with the person.
Yeah.
So yes, starting to answer your question and moving on to the part on how do we change that? How do we? For me, it's really the shifting of being in the doing to going to the being. And we can
Mm,
talk in another session maybe into the more yin and yang. Huh? But really, the idea is, as we talked about disconnection, is about connecting, and it's very simple. Connecting is about being present in your body. And to be present in your body, there's different activities you can do, and they're very simple and they're available to everybody. And I would say the first one is relaxation. And it can be relaxation through, you know, different types of yoga, yoga that are more restorative, not like sporty yoga, but really, you know, like slow, cool yoga. Can be just lying down and relaxing your body, and really intentionally relaxing your core, your abdominal. So relaxation, what can help is breathing. So you don't need any guru master courses or anything, but just breathing deeply and relaxing your nervous system, and doing this regularly, not waiting for the moment that you're super stressed to do that. Starting a little practice, even it's just 5 minutes at the end of the day, you know, as you're reviewing your day, going into relaxation. So relaxation, um, deep breathing, and then of course all the types of yoga, meditation. And for me, another thing that is also very good and not so formal is movements. So,
mm,
you know, moving, dancing, but listening to the body, being like not a performance, not to be looking good, but to be with like, ooh, what does my body wants to do now? Do I want to stretch? Do I want to dance? Inhabiting your body. This is really
mm,
for me the way, the portal to, when you are in the body, then you're like, okay, what is happening right now? Oh, I feel there is a tension. Okay, what is behind this tension? Is it some anger that I have? Maybe there's some fear or stress that I have. And how can I breathe into this? Can I relax? Yeah.
yeah. Very good. And what I would add to that is that I think the core of it is, why are we wanting to put ourselves in such situations? Maybe this could be another way to reflect on things. Of course, you probably need to put yourself in a state of mind where you can reflect on things and not being in this reactionary mode, right? But once you have done that experience of reacting, being in emergencies and all the things, and then you can ask yourself, why do you want to keep, or why do you want to have this type of experience? And what is that experience is giving you that you're not creating any other way, right? So like we were talking about, we are probably seeking some type of adrenaline in our lives, accomplishment or whatever, maybe saving or helping, whatever the achievement that we're wanting, right? And that's amazing, but there's always a reason behind why we want to do that, and getting really curious about what is it that you're seeking that you can't really get any other way, or that you're not creating for yourself. Another way that I would love for everyone listening to think about is, how can you create that safety within your body? Like with Pauline, what she mentioned, amazing exercises. What helps me, for instance, is really sit and, you know, feel my body, like literally physically sitting and feeling my body and just seeing what's happening. And then why am I feeling this way, right? But before even asking yourself why, you can just
Mhm.
feel and then see what's happening. And whenever I do that, as if like my body listens to me and then calms down, or it feels like my body like bumped on my head, and then if I listen, my body's like, I'm being listened, right? Or I'm being heard somehow. The
Yes.
sensation I get. So that's why I really sit and feel whatever is bothering me, and then just sitting with that helps me then just be in myself, and then feeling like I'm able to create whatever the safety I need. Of course, I'm not talking about middle of the emergency sitting and not taking care of yourself, right? That's not what I mean. But once you are safe physically, then how can you create that safety emotionally? This is what I'm talking about. So, because whenever I know that I don't have this feeling of safety, I tend to act in weird ways. I tend to, I don't know, make weird decisions and get into the people pleasing or whatever it is, or getting into the proving mentality of I need to prove that I'm brave or I need to prove that I'm great or whatever it is, right? So that's why I really need that safety to say that I am already great the way I am, or whatever the version you want to use to calm your system, nervous system, your body. And maybe the other one to also reflect on how can you structurally create your day in a way that you don't feel like you're reacting the whole time. And how can you do that in a way that you know how to be in charge, you know how to trust your abilities to create that structure for yourself, even if it's in the middle of all the difficulties in life. Because whatever the chaos we're experiencing, there's always the element that we can control, there's always the element that we can be in charge of. So how can we be in charge of that, instead of giving ourselves the feeling that we need to react, right? So these are the things that I guess you can try out different things. Of course, what works for me may not work for other people, and it's absolutely fine, whichever works. Important is that you stay conscious and aware that you are trying different things and seeing what works for you. And how can you do that into a habit and keep doing that until you start having this feeling that you are aligned or you are doing what really matters to you, or whatever you're listening basically to what your body is wanting, your heart is wanting, your mind is wanting. um Anything, Pauline, you want to add to that?
No, I think it's good. I really heard what you were saying about questioning what we are looking to feel
Yeah,
behind all these actions, and I think this would give us some food for conversation, maybe about worthiness, sense of purpose,
yeah.
in another talk. So
Yes, exactly. I also thought that, a lot of the issues that I had in life came deep down into me not feeling worthy, or me not feeling enough, or me not feeling, I don't know, good or belonging, or whatever the sense is that we want to all humanly want, right? So if we
mhm.
don't feel that, then we start actioning and doing a lot of things and getting into a lot of um, these situations that in the end may not serve if we keep doing it in the long run. If we want to do that, consciously on purpose in order to achieve ABC, yes, maybe it's a good thing, but we know that in the long run, you need to choose what's best for you and for your well being. Okay, so having said that, we really hope that you will try to apply any of the suggestions that we've given you. And if you want coaching on this topic or any other topic that we're covering, Pauline and I will be happy to get any messages DMs, whatever you prefer. Yes. Otherwise, we will keep talking in these Tuesday episodes about different obstacles that we talked about already in the first episode. And then if you have any suggestions to cover in this, you let us know as well. We're happy to do that. Pauline, thank you so much for making it on time. And I wasn't sure if I could do it on my own, but now it's great that we did it together.
Yes, pleasure, Asel, and thank you everyone for following us.
Yes.
See you
Thank you
next
so
week.
much. And see you next week at the same time.
Yes, bye.
Bye. I'm ending.